Good morning. Welcome to the Stress Management Workshop with the Health and Counseling Services with CU Wellness. My name is Barak Hussein. I'm the International Student Counselor at the Health and Counseling Services. And every year around this time, we offer these workshops for students just to look at how to manage stress, how to take care of this time of year where there's a lot of schoolwork, a lot of assignments, and of course, with the pandemic going on, the stress levels are a little bit higher than normal, as we see with our students. So we're offering this workshop to help students and anybody who is available to join us live to look at a variety of different strategies in terms of how to deal with stress, how to manage stress, but most importantly, understand how to deal with stress and understand how it impacts you on an individual level. So good morning, welcome. I'll just give a few minutes while of our viewers join us. And for those who are joining us, you just let us know where you're joining us from. And I can see the comments. So definitely I will do my best to answer and interact with everybody who is joining us. So I'll just wait for people to join us. So here in Ottawa, we woke up to snow this morning, and I know we had the snow from last night. It was hard to see when the sun went down as we had an early sunset yesterday, and then waking up to snow in November is probably a little bit too early. How about you guys? Do you feel that it's a little bit too early, or are you looking forward to the snow? I'm probably one of those people who find it's probably just a little bit too early. Want a little bit more time enjoying the fall, although it's already hit -10 in some parts. I hear in Western Canada there's already lots and lots of snow there, which is the norm, right? Later on in December, we'll be having another workshop on how to deal with exam stress, and especially leading up to the holidays. And we'll customize it, of course, in terms of the holidays this year, in terms of how different it is from when it was last year. Yeah, people are saying it's a little bit too early, huh? That's okay. We're troopers. We're troopers here in Canada. We've learned how to deal with it. I think a lot of people have already booked their appointments to get their snow tires on, the winter tires on, right? All right, so I see we've gotten some people joining us. I'm going to begin the workshop now, and it's not just going to be me. I would love to have the interaction. I'll be asking questions, and you're more than welcome to type in your answers, and I can do my best to answer them. All right, so let's begin. All right, and this is how possibly we feel like or tend to or imagine ourselves to look like this time of year with all the stress that's happening. Hopefully by the end of this workshop, you'll be able to have a little bit better handle understanding on what stress is, how it impacts you, and how you can deal with it. So first and foremost, it's really important to understand what is stress exactly, right? And essentially what it is, it's the body's response to a perceived demand or threat. How it responds to it is in the fight or flight response. And there is a release of stress hormones in our system, which are adrenaline and cortisol. And what happens is these hormones have a really important physiological impacts on us. So what they do, it increases our heart rate, our breathing rate is changed as well, muscle tension, there's increased blood pressure, there's also the secretion of insulin to liberate energy, and there's the increase of blood flow to the brain, the lungs, and the heart, and the muscles. That's why you feel so activated, hence the fight response, right? Or the flight. So adrenaline and cortisol, they also have an effect on decreasing blood flow to the digestive tract and the kidneys and the skin, hence why you don't really feel hungry when sometimes when you're in that mode of stress. And what we see here is that chronic stress, our immune function actually decreases, which then leaves the body more vulnerable to infection. So this is why it's really important that when you do start getting stressed, that you recognize what's happening so you are more likely to be proactive in preventing those symptoms. We see that stress and health, when it comes to long-term exposure to stress, there's been lots of different diseases and conditions that are linked to that because of these stress hormones that are released in our body. You can see here there are issues around heart disease, hypertension, gastrointestinal problems, a variety of different issues, right? And so there's also mental health problems as well that could go from abuse to suicide, drug use, tobacco, insomnia, aggression, and including other problems. So it's really important to recognize that the release of these stress hormones in our system, the chronic release of them over time, if they're not taken care of, can really lead to some detrimental physical and mental health problems. Also, when we look at the signs of stress, most of the time we ignore them or they go unnoticed. But they can also be signs of physical illnesses. For example, chest pains that sometimes people feel that it's just perhaps anxiety, could be serious heart problems. Or sometimes people think they have serious heart problems, but in fact, it is probably just anxiety and stress. So it's really important not to ignore these signs and symptoms. When we take a look at what are the sources of stress, we have a variety of different issues around us, or rather factors such as the physical environment, the bright lights, the noise, the heat, the cold. In this case, it's cold now, traffic, all of that, our physical environment can impact us. Our social relationships as well. So rudeness or aggressiveness in others. You notice when people give you a type of attitude, how you respond to that. Conflicts with friends, family, neighbors, not spending time with important people, lack of social supports, loneliness, all of these also have a huge impact as a source of stress. Financial issues, of course, we take a look at taxes, bills, unplanned expenses, and so on and so forth. Just trying to make ends meet can really be such a huge factor in impacting our stress. Organizational, so red tape, rules, regulations, deadlines, especially when it comes to student life, deadlines are huge stressors, especially when people feel that they are not on top of their stress or their deadlines, so to speak. Then you have life events. Things happen, such as the death of a family member, loss of a job, illness, starting university, especially the university year that we have had this year, right? That's also something to consider. Work promotion, a birth of a child, marriage, these are positive things, but they also have that impact of releasing those hormones in our body, whether it's a negative or a positive. So lifestyle choices, especially when it comes to sleep, drug use, substance abuse, time management, nutrition, if those are not in good balance, of course, they're going to have a huge impact on our overall wellness. And of course, when it comes to physiological sources of stress, so poor health, physical illnesses, pregnancy illnesses, these all can have an added stress on our lives if we don't take care of them properly. So signs and symptoms of stress. So now we've got a better idea of how sometimes when we ignore them, how they can impact us. But now let's look at some actual signs and symptoms of stress. So you have, when it comes to physical signs, a variety of different things such as increased heart rate, dry mouth, chest pains, headaches rather, stomach cramps. So there's a variety of things that could happen when people get stressed, and not everybody's going to respond the same way. Then you have behavioral signs that include increased smoking or drinking, drug use. So for example, the impact of substance abuse, right? Or just usage of substances, aggression, changes in eating habits, increase or decrease, sleeping, same thing, nervousness. Then you also have the mental signs. So difficulty concentrating, decreased memory, loss of humor, perhaps, inattentiveness, bad dreams. So these are all common things that can happen from the mental signs. And then we have emotional signs. So anxiety, anger, irritability, impatience, frustration, worry, and fear. So I'm going to ask you for a few moments here, for those of you who are joining, to go through this and take a look at what are the top 5 things that happen to you when you get stressed. So just take a moment to think about what are the stress symptoms that you exhibit. While you have that, I'm going to put some nice relaxing music on, relaxation music. All right. So what are the top 5 stress symptoms and symptoms that you find when you are getting to the point of feeling stressed? Most commonly, people describe that a lot of the physical and behavioral, I find, occurs, especially when it comes to eating and sleeping. A lot of people tend to either have more sleep or less sleep. So it's very interesting to see how different people respond very differently, right? It's not a cookie cutter approach in the sense that all of us experience the same type of stress symptoms, because it's highly individual, right? A lot of people perhaps stress eat and others completely lose their appetite. I'm one of those people that completely lose their appetite. So it's really interesting to see that it's very important to recognize when you are experiencing the stress, so that when the stressor signals to you that you are experiencing this, then you can be proactive in terms of doing the best that you can to be preventative, rather than waiting for a panic attack or a full stress mode to kick in. So moving on to the next slide, we can take a look here in terms of understanding how demands can be also a source of stress for us, right? So for a demand to be evaluated as stress producing, the person must perceive it that the sources they have are less than what they need, right? So resources could be what? Time, money, energy, support from other people, patience, right? And so the perceptions of resources are less, then that person will experience that stress. Even if, for example, let's say they're prepared for an exam, they just feel perhaps in terms of resources, they didn't have enough time or prepared properly for it, right? In terms of the ways that we think, that can also be a huge source of stress. So negative thinking, self-talk, discounting the positive, minimizing the positive, so maximizing the negatives, overgeneralizing, pessimism, overanalyzing, self-criticism, exaggerating, perfectionism. These are huge when I see them with students. A lot of students feel that they have to hand in the perfect assignment. Even if it's late, they would still rather be late and hand in a perfect assignment. In essence, they're losing marks when they hand in an assignment. I think a lot of us can really connect with that idea. Demanding also from ourselves, but also from people around us, awfulizing, catastrophizing, rigid black and white thinking. This black and white thinking can be very detrimental when you are not flexible in terms of going with the flow. So all of these types of thinking can also contribute to stress. So now let's get to the actual activation of how we can manage our stress in a healthy way. We see here that we looked at what is stress, how it impacts us, the signs and symptoms, and now let's take a look at the step-by-step. So number one, it's really important to understand and identify if you are actually stressed. I find a lot of people cannot recognize when they're stressed. They feel that something is wrong with them. And essentially, most of the time, it is the contribution of stress to that feeling. So just like we took a look at earlier, it's really important to understand what the signs and symptoms are of stress. In this chart here, with all of the physical, the behavioral, the mental, as well as the emotional. Once you have all of this together and a better understanding of how you individually respond to stress, then we can have a better understanding of how to identify when you are stressed. Step 2 is identifying what the stressors are. We want to look for the cause, and it's usually really related to a change that happened in our life. And it could be around, like the strategy to do that is to look at when it happened. When's a good to go back and see perhaps when it happened. So start thinking of when the problem started happening, perhaps when you physiologically started responding differently, or mentally or behaviorally. So for an example here, 2 weeks ago, look at what happened when your sleeping changed. You notice that within the last 2 weeks, your sleep is not the same as it was before. You're oversleeping or you're not getting enough sleep. Go back to around that time. Perhaps you can talk to family and friends, and they can also contribute to that observation of what was happening around those 2 weeks. Ask them if you can't figure it out yourself. So usually when we do this identification of the stressors, it's important to go back to when these stress symptoms started occurring, and then to look at what happened around that time. So step 1, we said, was to identify if you were stressed using the stress print, this one here, the signs and symptoms, to figure out what your stress print is. So just like you have your own individual fingerprint, we have your own individual stress print. And then step 2 is identifying what these stressors are by narrowing down when or what was going on at the time when these symptoms started showing themselves. Step 3 is identifying the reasons for the stressors, right? So this step is a bit challenging because you might have to do a little bit of reflection and deep introspection. And so questions that you could ask yourself is how is this event or situation threatening or demanding from me? And so when we look at that, we see sometimes that the event or the situation doesn't necessarily coincide with your beliefs, your desires, your wants, your values, or your expectations. So for example, honesty is something that's really important to you, and being lied to, there's a disparity there. So you see that is the root of that stressor. So somebody lies to you, and you find that somebody's hidden something from you because your values around honesty are very important to you. You will have that conflict, that internal conflict. That in itself, that internal conflict, that feeling that you get, that is a source of stress. It can exhibit itself, just like we said, in all of these different signs and symptoms in different ways. Step 4, we want to take a look at selecting appropriate strategies, right? And there are different levels. For those of you who are Carleton students, even if you're not Carleton students, you just go to our website and you type in 50 proven stress reducers. We have a great PDF there that takes a look at so many different stress reducing factors that you can do. For example, this is a very simple and easy one that I find students and professionals can really benefit in the sense of preparing your clothes the night before, your food, your lunch, and plan for the next day. I know a lot of us are not moving, meaning that we're not traveling to work or traveling to classes like we were before, but this preparation is still valuable in terms of preparing what your meal plan is, and so on and so forth. This preparation can really help prevent a lot of grief later on in the week. So if you just check out the 50 proven stress reducers, I won't have time to go through that, but the link is right there. You can just type in 50 proven stress reducers on our Carleton website, and it should pop up on our health and counseling page as a resource. So level 1, if you can do something about it right away, do it. Level 2 is managing the signs and symptoms of the stress. Again, that big chart that I showed with the variety of different stress symptoms, here we can take a look at a variety, again, of different strategies that can help reduce that. And we take a look at here in terms of breathing, progressive relaxation, meditation, and I'll describe them a little bit further. And we're actually going to be doing one of these at the end of our session today in terms of the meditative practice, the mindfulness aspect of it, where we're going to include breathing. So breathing in very slowly through your nose, holding your breath, and then releasing through your mouth. What we want to do is breathe in, expanding our lungs like balloons, holding in our breath. So counting up to 4, holding your breath at 7, and releasing out at 8. Sorry there. So this slow, deep breathing, what it does, it helps slow down the heart rate. It helps get oxygen where it needs to go. And that's why you feel relaxed after you do that type of breathing. Progressive relaxation means tensing the muscles and releasing. So tensing and releasing, tensing and releasing. And what you want to do is either starting from the feet up or from the head down. And this is a very, very effective practice to do in the morning when you wake up. It helps rejuvenate you, get the blood flowing. And when you go to bed, along with the breathing, it can be very sleep inducing, very relaxing as you relax the muscles, especially when you focus on different parts of your body where you feel the most tension. Meditation, which we will do at the end of our session today. Visualization, which means picturing a scene or focusing on something and visualizing that in your mind. Again, we will practice that at the end. I'm going to be combining all 4 of these in one, and you'll see how effective they are. When we did these workshops, excuse me, face-to-face with our students at the campus, when we did this at the end of the session, I found that students were just floating away as they really got into this. Of course, getting a massage is absolutely great for the tension in your body, the different muscles. Exercise is your #1 stress reducer. And I know during the pandemic, that's been very challenging considering that the gyms have been closed, opening and closing again. So it's really important to be able to exercise at home. And there's been a variety, a plethora of videos out there that you can find on YouTube in terms of home exercises that have been very, very effective. Essentially, what you want to do is get those stress hormones that we talked about earlier out of your body and release endorphins into your system, which is what makes you happy, the happy hormones, right? You want those endorphins in your system. Exercise can be anything from 3 to 4 times a week, a walk, a run. It could be along the lines of doing those home workouts like we were saying, could be yoga, could be a variety of different things. So please make sure to include exercise at least 3 to 4 times a week, 20 minutes minimum. You'll find yourself that you would gradually increase that. Humor, that's really effective during difficult times. And lots of studies have proven the impact of positivity and humor on our wellness and our mental health. Hot bath, a jacuzzi, 5-10 minutes in a bathtub at the end of the evening can really help those muscles. And finding a hobby, a healthy, what's the word I'm looking for? A healthy distraction, right? So it could be photography, it could be art, it could be anything. And I know during the pandemic, it's been very challenging for people to be able to take a look at how they want to perhaps develop skills, or it just doesn't make sense sometimes when you think about it, that we are going through a global pandemic and people are saying, oh, why don't you do this or why don't you do that? It's a perfect time for this and that. We also have to acknowledge, though, that yes, we are going through this global crisis together, and sometimes it's hard to put our attention to working on skills or hobbies when all of this is happening and there's so much happening. At the same time, this is a healthy way of coping and dealing with the stressors. So level 3, it's really important to take a look at longer term strategies, right? And this is around learning how to be a positive thinker, right? How to end negative talk, how to think about things in a positive way, practicing positive language. And the more you practice this positive language, it will reduce the negative language in your vocabulary, but also in your mind, right? It'll reduce the stress involved with the negative thinking that we've talked about earlier. Avoid being influenced by others. And we know, excuse me, got my Carlton cup. Nice warm tea with honey. So, this dip in the change of weather, the temperature really has an impact on us sometimes, even just our coughing, right? So when we talk about influence, this is a big one, especially when it comes to social media influence. And I find a lot of people become really stressed when they're comparing themselves to other people, when they are looking at how they want to be like the person on Instagram or YouTube or wherever. And so much stress when they feel that they're not good enough or not the same. And they feel sad that this person is showing how great their lives are, when in fact it's fake. It's not real. It's just for social media. And I find a lot of students that I've worked with over the years, have gotten themselves to that space where they've allowed negative influences such as social media to impact their well-being, their sense of self-esteem. And so that's something really important to keep in mind, that especially now with the increase of use of technology, and especially in social media during the pandemic, it's really important to learn how to balance that. It's to realize that not everything you see is real, but also to follow positive influencers, pages that are about wisdom and growth and awareness and how to take care of yourself and knowledge, rather than the silly things that we see out there that can impact you negatively. Another strategy is disputing irrational beliefs. So this is something that we do in cognitive behavioral therapy, is taking a look at a maladaptive or self-defeating thought and how to replace it with a more positive and reasonable thought. And so this is a process. I'm just describing it quickly now, but it's an actual process that we do in therapy. So for those of you who are interested in that, absolutely please do connect with a counselor to be able to work on that. One of my favorites here, and I have it highlighted, is seeing problems as opportunities. This is a valuable life skill because we are going to be challenged again and again in so many different ways in terms of the problems that come our way. Are we always going to be dealing with it with crisis, with traumatic responses and a lot of stress and anxiety? Or are we going to take these problems and reframe them as opportunities? And I always use this hand movement. So when a problem comes your way like this, reframe it and making an opportunity for growth, for development, for setting boundaries around yourself, for meeting new people, for cutting out toxic people, opening up horizons, just like sometimes you want to set boundaries. So seeing problems as an opportunity is a huge, huge life skill, and a significant one that can truly impact you on so many different ways. Learning how to relabel emotions is a very good one as well. Understanding anger is not always saying something, I'm angry at everything, but understanding the root. It could be related to frustrations. It could be related, like we mentioned earlier, somebody lying to you. So going down to the root of the issue when it comes to emotions can go a long way in dealing with stress, rather than constantly being reactive, right? Learning how to be proactive, building skills such as time management skills, negotiating, problem solving, communication. These are all valuable long-term strategies. And you can talk to a counselor, you can talk to an advisor on campus. For those of you outside of the university, there's also many support services that you can access online as well. First thing though, if you are dealing with the mental health issues, to talk to a doctor, and then they can do the appropriate referrals. Talking things out with somebody, of course, as a counselor, I am going to say that. And I would encourage people to also look at the possibility of talking to a therapist, as they can help you really work on these strategies. So step 5 is evaluating yourself. After honestly trying these strategies for around 21 days to develop 21 days, you want to see the impact of that. So studies have shown that it takes around 21 days, so 2 to 3 weeks, to develop a good or bad habit. So that's what we want to do, is to try these for the next 2 to 3 weeks and ask yourself these questions at the end. Am I still stressed? If no, then you know what? High five. You've done well in terms of finding the right formula, so to speak, that works for you individually according to your stress print. If you're finding that you're still stressed, that's okay. Go through the steps again and see what works best for you. Tweak, try different things, talk to different people to see how people themselves deal with stress, and get different ideas to come up with a different action plan for yourself. So stress proofing yourself, how do you do that? Well, it's the basic things that we look at when we talk about stress management, which means eating well, sleeping well, and being physically active. When these 3 things are in balance and you are hit with a difficult situation, you are more likely to handle this difficult situation, because these are the things that you have control over, right? However, if these 3 things are not in good balance and you're hit with a difficult situation, then it becomes even more challenging to deal with it. Other things as well is eliminating substances, establishing and maintaining healthy relationships, so getting rid of toxic relationships around you. I know sometimes it can be really hard because you could be living with somebody who is toxic. So in this case, perhaps the counseling process can help you look at different strategies on how not to engage with that person that you are living with. Keeping a positive attitude, building skills, being creative. And these are just some of a few ideas in terms of how to stress-proof yourself. So how do we make these changes? You want to make them slow, right? Change the easiest things at first, right? This helps you build your confidence and look forward to taking on more challenging. So these little steps. Don't get discouraged by setbacks. We want to learn from them so that we can do them better next time, and find out how others have done it, like we mentioned earlier, because you can save yourself a lot of time kind of like reinventing the wheel by looking at what other people have done and learn. Again, like we said, what could work for one person may not work for you, but it doesn't hurt to see how other people are doing it to get different ideas. Finally, this is a great start to looking at how you can manage your stress, especially during midterm times, especially during this time of year with the weather changes, at least in this part of the world for us, and understanding that it is a process, right? There's obviously a lot more information, books and videos out there on the internet to help you with that. If you feel that stress is overwhelming you, for Carleton students, you don't know how to begin, please do contact the Health and Counseling Services for students and residents. You can contact the residence counseling, and it is all virtual, meaning it's on the phone. You don't need to come in person. So we'll set you up with the appropriate resources to help you. And again, when it comes to the stress management, it's really important to look at different resources that are available. Here are just a few that you can see online. And I know during the pandemic, there's been so much more resources out there online. So for students, this information was taken from, as you see here, from the Concordia University, and this is how you can get a hold of us at Carleton University for those of you who are Carleton University students. So now we're going to do the mindfulness exercise that I always look forward to, and I know a lot of the students look forward to when we do this workshop. So just give me a moment. I will also share what we've been listening to quietly in the background. And so we're going to take a few minutes to work on relaxing our bodies and our minds in terms of getting into that space. I'm going to ask you to sit in a comfortable position wherever you are right now, and let's get started. I hope this has been a useful exercise for you to relax yourself, to feel more rejuvenated. And it only takes a few minutes. And you can do this anytime, whenever you're starting to feel overwhelmed, whenever you're feeling that there's a lot going on. This is such a simple way of reducing the tension in your body physically by doing the muscle tension, relaxation technique, the breathing, visualizing, and just meditating, focusing. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact our Facebook page. If you are a student at Carleton and looking for counseling, please don't hesitate to contact the counseling services, and we'll do our best to connect you with the appropriate referrals and resources. And for those of you outside the university, thank you for joining. I hope that this has been useful. You can share this, as it will be on our Facebook page afterwards. And in about a month's time, we'll be doing another workshop on exam stress and how to deal with the holidays coming up. So please stay tuned for that. Thank you once again, and have a wonderful, blessed day.